Hey everybody, I'm Tuxtradamus. Welcome to another episode of Die Party Drawing Board. Um, Today we're going to be going over the game that I'm going to be GMing for the channel, which is going to be on starting whenever we are able to get everything around. It's going to be on Thursdays, the usual game time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Kind of that usual time that all the other weekly or weekday Die Party shows are on. So the game that I'm going to be running, because I realize we've hinted at it like in the other shows and stuff a little bit, but haven't really like talked about it a lot in like not in our group chat. Basically, we've talked about it a lot in group chat because we've been kind of working on it for a while. Figuring out exactly what we want to do. We've had a few ideas and we've kind of narrowed it down to this thing that I'm pretty excited about, and the group seems that they're pretty excited about. So now we're excited to share it with all of you. Basically, today I'm going to be talking about two things, basically the system and then the idea and what the game itself is going to be like. So the system we're using is called Fate Core. It's got a long whole thing, kind of where it came from and stuff. It's by Evil Hat Productions. They make two games that are called Fate. There's Fate Accelerated and Fate Core. Fate Accelerated is like super rules light, and then Fate Core is a little more in depth. Like there's like in Fate Accelerated, there's just 5 things you have, and then like that's it. In Fate Core, you actually have like skills and your aspects and different things kind of that make up your character. And there's a little more to it. So that's kind of we wanted to make sure we wanted to use Fate Core to kind of like had a little more depth to it, so everybody could kind of dig into that. They're both really good. Fate Accelerated is kind of if you want, it's basically however complex you want to go with your rules. Like if you're good with like a little more complexity to them, like a little more crunch, and like it's kind of more like if you want skills to be important and if you want like what the different characters can do, like to be represented that way, Fate Core is kind of the way you want to go. And then Fate Accelerated is like, like skills aren't a thing. It's basically just how the character does a thing. Like it's very, very narrative driven. So if that's your thing, that's cool. But yeah, we're going to be using Fate Core. And then the idea of the game is sort of a mix between weird dream stuff, like it's taking inspiration from a lot of places. So kind of the big things are Persona, all the Persona games. Henley's streamed a bunch of them on his channel, so I'm sure you've seen all of those, like Persona 3, Persona 5. So that kind of taking stuff from Persona, taking stuff from Inception, a little bit from the Matrix, from than other kind of forms of weird media, like weird paintings, like I mentioned to Henley, like MC Escher stuff, Salvador Dali stuff, like those, like that weird surrealism kind of imagery. It's gonna be a very weird game, which it's not gonna be Numenera weird, where like there's a point to it. Like in Numenera, there was weird stuff, but like there was a reason for it. Like there was some sort of scientific thing that led to it because it was part of the other worlds or whatever. And in this game, it's gonna be about basically the highest level 20,000 foot view of it is the players are going to be going into people's dreams and doing stuff in there. They're going to have these weird powers, and basically be able to enter into other people's minds and go into their dreams and do crazy shit, like in Inception or like in Persona or whatever, kind of where it's like a big mix of that. So hopefully that sounds cool. I've been putting a lot of thought into everything that's going to be going around it for a while. I'll probably show you the document that I've been working on and like writing and stuff. And the group seems like they're pretty excited about it too. So yeah, I think we got a pretty good thing. And so once we get everybody on board with characters and everything and all that, we're going to be starting this up probably the next few weeks or so, I'd say. Obviously, it's up to Henley and the group as for schedules and stuff. But yeah, now that we've got this, and I'm actually doing the drawing board to show everybody what we're working on. We can get it going fairly soon. So yeah, once again, it's Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, the usual die party time. So let's get to the meat of this drawing board episode. So first of all, I'm going to show you the game itself, Fate Core. So if Henley can be so kind as to whip over to my screen. There we go. Thank you. Sure thing. There we go. That should be good. Yeah, so this is the PDF for Fate. It's pay what you can, pay what you want off of drive-through. So you can or on Evil Hat's website too. If you go to Evil Hat's website and look it up, you can get this. You can download the PDF for free if you want to. And if you really, really like it, you can give them a few bucks for it because it's pretty good. So basically, the main thing behind Fate and where Fate gets its name from is Fate points. So basically, the GM and the players have this kind of currency where they can spend things and say something about the something about the narrative of the game or something about the narrative of what's going on. And so when players make a roll, they can spend a fate point to get a bonus on it, or they can spend a fate point to declare something about the narrative that is just true. Oh, thank you, FCMA. FCMA put a link to it in the chat, so that is super cool. Yeah, if you click that and go there, you can find the game. And no, Doc, I probably wouldn't be able to talk if I couldn't use my hands. I'm a very, very excitable talker. So yeah, back to fate points. Players spend fate points to either do better on their rolls or to declare things about the world and such. I spend fate points. I don't spend fate points. I mostly give them to the players. I kind of use them in a little different way because my NPCs can still do stuff like that and because I also roll in this, so they can do better on their rolls with using fate points. Mostly, I use fate points by giving them to the players. They're kind of an incentive. Players can earn fate points through a bunch of different ways, but the main way is by invoking or by their things called aspects. What are aspects? Thank you, chat. Aspects are you start with 5, but they're basically like a phrase or a thing about your character. So here I'll bring up the aspects section in the book and we can kind of look at it together. So yeah, an aspect is a phrase that describes something unique or noteworthy about whatever it's attached to. Characters have these, but like anything in the game can have them. That's kind of a big thing about the game is that like characters have them, but also like the environment can have one or an item can have aspects. Like anything has these because basically you use them for these sorts of things. They can use them to do better on a roll or be compelled by them. Compelling is basically when your aspect affects you in a negative way, that's called compelling, and that's when a player can get a fate point back. So, for instance, let's look at the examples here for some aspects. Wizard for hire, rivals in the College Arcana. If I haven't been there, I've read about it. Not the face, and doesn't suffer fools gladly. So basically, an aspect can be anything. Like it can be a quote, it can be just like a descriptive phrase, it can be like as long as it's something unique and descriptive about whatever the aspect is for. So like this one, we know that Zerd the Arcane is a wizard. So Zerd is a magic user. Apparently there's some sort of mercenary. They went to the College Arcana and they have people there that don't really like them that much. They're very vain about their appearance from Not the Face. They study a lot. If I haven't been there, I've read about it. doesn't suffer fools gladly. So they're a little bit snippy. They're a little bit high strung. So basically, aspects. These are what aspects should do. You should be able to read through them and know what this thing is about. And we can also look at these to see how we can use these in play. So, like I said, with fate points, you can spend when you roll. Actually, let's talk about rolling. So, where's the rolling section at? Taking action. Here we go. So when you roll in this game, you roll what are called fate dice, which are D6, but they have different sides on them. They have 2 zeros, 2 minuses, and 2 pluses. And basically what happens is when you roll with whatever your skill is, and then you get the results and you add or subtract to come out with the results. So like, for instance, these examples here, like they rolled 2 minuses and 2 pluses. So it came out to a 0 from the dice. It's pretty simple math to figure that out. So if like on this first roll, if you had a +2 and you rolled this, your result would be a 2. So yeah, it's not like we're rolling D20s and adding THACO and all the crap. It's just pretty low, simple math to figure things out. And then basically when you roll, you're trying to hit a target number. There's kind of a chart, which is right here, called the ladder of like the result that you want to get. Like, so whenever player says, I want to break through this door because I'm a big, strong person. And I'm just going to punch the door and break it because that's how doors work. I'll say, well, punching a door and breaking it would be a great task because it's a really strong steel door. So you're going to have to get a great result to just punch it and break it. So they roll, and then they get a great, and they just punch through the door, and there you go. Yeah, it's always 4DF plus whatever your modifier is. That's always what you roll. And basically, you're always trying to hit something on this ladder, whether it's a passive thing and I say, oh, this is a fair goal or this superb goal or whatever, or it's rolling against like an NPC or something like that, and like it's a pose and like they get a result of 2, so they get a fair result, and you have to beat a 2 or whatever. It's always along this ladder of results for rolling a die. Doc says I'll never get to throw a grenade in Shadowrun. Yes, 40F means fate dice. I say 40F because that's the formula in Roll20. Because I've been digging around the character sheets in Roll20, so I'm kind of used to the 4DF thing on there. But yeah, that's kind of the meat of the system is this. You have your aspects and your skills. You take your 4 dice, you use your skill, you roll, and then you get a result. And then if you don't like your result, that's when you can spend fate points to change it. Basically, you can invoke your aspect, which means I have, like, if we go back to that Zerd guy, I'm a wizard for hire and I'm casting magic. I'm very good at magic. So I'm going to invoke my wizard for hire aspect, which means you get a +2 on the roll, and then you can get higher before. And you can do this for a bunch of times for all the different aspects you have. And then the big thing about having aspects for everything in the game is that you can invoke whatever aspect you want. So like if you're breaking down the door, you're trying to punch down the door and you want to invoke the aspect, like say it's in a building that's like tattered or like in low repair or whatever. You can invoke that, like, oh, this building is in low repair, so this door probably hasn't seen anything in like 20 years or whatever. And you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So invoke that aspect, and you get +2 in the roll. And that's basically the core of the rolling system and the mechanics of it, at least. So yeah, everything has aspects, and that's what makes up the game. The players have their aspects for the characters. NPCs have aspects and such. Environments have aspects, things can have aspects. And that's kind of my side of the prep and such, is coming up with things and giving them aspects, or coming up with people and things for the group to face, making sure they have aspects, making sure they have kind of deciding what level of stuff they're at, like kind of how important the NPC is means that they'll have different skills and such. And so like if they're a really cool, big, important NPC, they might have a few skills and a few really good ones. But if they're like just some random mook, it's pretty simple to just say, oh yeah, they have, everything's going to be average for them or whatever. Yes, you can invoke basically anything you want. You can invoke. If there's an aspect kind of in play during the scene, you can invoke it. So like if it's an aspect on like an NPC or in the environment, and actually that's a big part. Another thing you can do is one of the actions you can take is to create a scene aspect. So like if you say you're in a scene and your group is in a fight with some mooks and some goons or whatever, and you knock over a lantern and you want to say, I'm going to try to create an aspect of room on fire, and you knock over a lantern and light up a thing. And now like, and you get a good, and you pass the roll, you now create an aspect that the room's on fire, and you get to invoke that once for free because you created it. Yeah. Playing around with the aspects is like basically how you do well at this game. To be a good aspect, especially for players, like a good aspect lets you use it creatively in different ways how you want to, but also is good to be compelled, because again, compelling is how you get fate points back, because you spend fate points and then I give you fate points back, and they've got this kind of economy thing going where you invoke stuff and give the fate points back to me, and then I compel you and give the fate points back to you to spend on other things. And so yeah, like if like back to that Zerd friend, there was not the face. And so I would say like, well, you're very vain about your appearance. So I'm going to compel not the face, and say that when they punch you and give you a broken nose, or like they punch you and like bruise your cheek, and like, until that goes away. Like, I don't know, man. Like, and they're like, okay, cool. That sounds fun. I can play around with that. And then they get compelled and they get a fate point back. Or whatever way they want to get compelled. Basically, yeah, an invoke is using it positively, a compel is using it negatively. And that's kind of part of this whole economy of giving fate points back to the GM and back to the players. So let's look into more about the characters and what makes them up. Because, you know, you're playing this game, your character is the most important thing. So let's go through character creation. Or just not, we're not going to go through it. Well, we'll skim it basically. So the first thing you do is come up with your aspects. And the first aspect is like your high concept. So Zerd was a wizard for hire. Or if you're like badass swordsman or something like that. Or you're like hacker with a chip on their shoulder, like stuff like that. It's like the main thing that describes your character. The next one is what's called the trouble. And basically this is, here, let's go to the page. Something that complicates your existence. It's basically one that's very easy to be compelled, but can also be invoked if you wanted to. Like the Zerd's one was pretty good. It was Rivals at the Collegia Arcana. It shows that Zerd went to this college and learned magic there, but also that he has rivals there. And so it can be compelled into say, you're walking around and then suddenly Jacques Magic Man spots you out of the corner of his eye and like points and is like, you. And apparently he's really pissed off about something. Are you good to be compelled there? And you're like, cool, yeah, sure, I'll be compelled there. Yeah, the trouble is a very, very easy to be compelled, but can also be invoked if you're creative with it. It can also be very easily invoked. And again, that's kind of the key in like designing aspects, is making it so you can invoke them and compel them in lots of different situations. The next ones, because you get 5 aspects, and you can get more as the game goes on. Like basically advancement means you can get more aspects. Yes, being compelled means you get a fate point back. And yes, being compelled is also optional. So if I say blah, 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 I'm compelling your aspect, sucker for a pretty face, like this example here, you can say, no, I don't get compelled, but it does cost you a fate point. So if you get compelled, you're either going to lose a fate point or get a fate point. Again, part of that whole kind of economy thing of it, because the compelling is kind of my way of injecting stuff like that, very specific to your characters, and giving you that fate point back. It's basically how I specifically complicate your character's life or something like that. And also players are feel free to like invoke and compel other players too, actually. Or not invoke. You can't invoke someone else's. You can invoke someone else's aspect if it like relates to something, but you can compel somebody to do something if you want them to or whatever. Because you can give the fate point trading can also happen between players. So like if someone else has sucker for pretty face and you say like, hey, I want you to flirt with that person because I think it'd be funny, and they're like, sure, give me a fate point, and you can compel them, and that's a thing too, which is pretty cool. The other three aspects that you have, at least at the start, is have to do with the other characters in their party. So they call it the face trio, basically, like, and it's kind of this thing of like, describe something you've done, and then the other players can say how they interacted with you or how they helped with that or how they did something in there. So like if you come up with the idea of like, I once robbed a bank and we stole a bunch of diamonds and I sold it and I bought a really fancy car, and like you come up with the aspect, career criminal or like daredevil or greedy or something like that, like something around robbing the bank. Someone else can say, I was the getaway driver. If it had been for me, you wouldn't have gotten away so well. So I'm going to come up with terror behind the wheel or something like that. Those last three aspects are kind of that, where you involve yourself. Not only do you get more aspects to describe your character, you also involve yourself with the other PCs, which is pretty cool because then it makes connections between everybody. And a lot of it's be easier to see when we actually create the characters, because we're going to go through this like kind of like the other Dive Party shows. Our first, like, we'll have a session 0 of kind of creating characters and making sure everybody's on board with everything in the game. Excuse me. After you have your aspects picked out, then you have your skills. The skill list is pretty basic. Here's kind of the main skills. And they're pretty self-explanatory, like athletics, crafts, fight, notice, rapport, shoot, stealth, stuff pretty self-explanatory about what they can do. And then this describes also like what they're capable of doing. So obviously, like you can use whatever skill you want to like over do something or overcome an obstacle. Like if you want to punch down the door or you want to break through a door or whatever. A lot of things involve doors, because that's what's really behind RPGs is doors. You have to get through a door, because everything's a door, Sorry for getting a little philosophical on you there. But then you can also create an advantage, which is, like I said earlier, where you can declare an aspect for the scene. You can say, I'm going to use athletics and knock down a bunch of lanterns and light the room on fire, or I'm going to charm these people and say that the room likes my face or something like that, where you can declare an aspect about the scene and you can use it and your party can use it. And then, of course, attacking and defending, because, again, RPG, you're going to end up fighting something at some point. So then once you have your skills, you have things that are called stunts. Stunts are another thing. So if an aspect is like what describes your character and makes them unique, that are like facts about you, stunts are things that you can do that make you unique. Basically, they have to do with like skills or other stuff about your character, and they're like special things that you're capable of doing or about you. So like here, let's go back to the default skill list, and let's just dig into athletics for a moment. So athletics, here's some example stunts for it. So you have athletics, you're really good at athletics, and you want to be like even better at athletics. So you could have these stunts. So for instance, hardcore parkour. +2 to overcome actions with athletics, or if you're in a chase across rooftops or a similarly precarious environment. So like you want to be a really cool parkour kind of person that like jumps across roofs and like flips into things and does grinds and, you know, as parkour people do. You can take that stunt. And so whenever that applies, you get a +2. So if you're like, I'm going to run and I'm going to like jump across these things and I'm like flipping over this stuff and like, cool, hardcore parkour applies, get a +2. And you get a few of those for your character to kind of describe what they're really special at doing. It's a +2 to the result. So like you have your skill, you roll, and then you get a +2. So like if you had a 2 already, and then you rolled and you got a plus, and you got a -1, and you got another, and then you get the +2 from your stunt, you would end up with a 3 total. That's kind of the whole thing about it. Stunts can also do more than just like giving you a bonus on a roll. Like, let's go into burglary. Like this one, talk the talk. You can use burglary in place of contacts whenever you're dealing specifically with other thieves and burglars. Like you can use skills in place of other skills. Because, you know, like you're punching down a door. It's what you're doing. But if you can like have a stunt where you're like, oh, I'm an architect, so I'm very good at I'm building things and knowing the weaknesses of stuff. So I can use my lore skill or something like that. And I can destroy the door with my lore skill. Things like that. Basically, yeah, stunts let you, again, they're unique things that you're capable of doing for your character. Yes, you can. Doc's asking if you can invoke multiple aspects. Basically, yeah, as long as you have fate points, you can invoke as many as you want. So like you could potentially invoke like 3 aspects and get a +6 to your roll if it's like a really difficult thing and enough aspects apply. And yeah, if you have this like your stunt, if you're like your stunt is free, so like you get your +2 and then you can invoke however many you want. So yeah, it's this whole thing of however many you want to invoke and whatever stunts apply and building all that up whenever you make a roll. We're going into a lot of all of it at once right now, of course, but yeah, when you're actually in it, it's a lot more simple. So like, because it's very, both Fate systems are very narrative driven. So like Fate Accelerated is even more so because of how light the rules are, but Fate Core is still driven by what's happening in the narrative. So like you say, I'm jumping across these rooftops to get over this fence. And so hardcore parkour applies, and I'm also going to invoke and spend a fate point. I'm going to invoke my acrobat raised in the circus aspect, and so get to get another +2. I'm also going to invoke my lightweight body or something like that to get another +2, and so you'd have a +6 on the roll total, and then you roll and see what happens, in addition to whatever your athletic skill is. So yeah, there's a lot of things you can do, because kind of it goes back to like the main thing of the game is cool people doing cool things, and the player characters are like, they're like the protagonists in a cool movie or an anime or a video game or whatever, and like you want to see them succeed and do cool things, so you have a lot of chances to like do better at stuff and overcome these obstacles and such. Let's see. So back up to character creation, and yeah, that's actually it for mechanics wise for a character. So you have your aspects, you have your skills, you have your stunts, and that's what your character is. It's fairly simple because a lot of it is kind of coming out of your head, and like it's very narrative. It's like again, it's very narrative driven. So like, yeah, the aspects are entirely like whatever you're come up with about your character. Your skills describe what you're good at doing, and then the stunts are again like the unique things that you can do. So it's a lot of you describing what you want your character to be able to do, and then we build that into the mechanics of it. So there's not as much. There's a little bit of like picking stuff from the list, kind of with skills and with stunts, but you can come up with your own stunts. The skills are kind of on the list, but like your aspects are all up to you. And so it's not like D&D where you like put things together from a list or whatever, but yeah, just a different thing of character creation. But yeah, so that's what your character is. after you make them. So we've talked about fate points. We talked about characters. We've talked about skills and stunts. Fighting in this is fairly simple. So that basically when you have to do something and there's going to be rolls for it, there's a few things that can happen with it. So like challenges are kind of like skill challenges in D&D where it's like a few things. So it's like you and the party have to make multiple rolls to overcome something. A contest is like when two or more people are trying to do something. So like if you're arguing against somebody or arm wrestling matches, races, or other sports competitions, public debates are all good examples of contests. Conflict is when there's like active harming against each other, where it's like a fight or and something like that. So the contest is going to be like one or a series of rolls to figure that out. Conflict is where the fight's actually going to happen. And so basically the conflict system is right here. So we set the scene, kind of figure out where the conflict is taking place. And then there's things called zones, which are basically the areas like in the scene. So like say you're fighting in a building and the first floor and you're walking into a hotel and you're in the lobby and there's like a bar to the right and like a little sitting area. And there's this big grand staircase and there's a whole second floor. Like the first floor and the second floor will be different zones that you can move to and like basically where the action is taking place. You have an initiative and then on your turn, you take an action, do something. If you attack somebody, they get a chance to defend. Basically that's how like the everything works like that. It's basically each attack ends up being kind of a contest of like you do your attack, whoever you're attacking does a defense, and then if you beat them, then you deal damage or take them out or whatever. And then when everyone's done, you start over until the conflict is done. What's cool about conflicts is the players can always concede, which is a way to, because the players have a lot of narrative control in this game with fate points and describing stuff about the scene, and also this fact that they can concede. Because when you concede, you say what happens. It's something bad. It's something very negative, but you don't die or like whatever the opponent wanted to happen happens. Like, so say you're fighting and they were going to kill you, but then you're like, okay, we're losing this really badly and I'm the only one left. Everyone else is knocked out or whatever. We're going to concede. And then we figure out what happens there. Like instead of killing you, they're like, oh, they're going to be worth a lot of money. Let's capture them and take them hostage and then put them in this room or whatever. And then we start the scene of the group being captured. Also conceding means you get fate points back. So that's kind of the ways that conflicts can end. Either the players can win and beat the other team. They can be taken out, or you can concede a conflict like whenever you want to. And earn fate points and then kind of decide what happens, and we take the narrative in that direction and figure out where it goes from there. So that's kind of it for the mechanics. Like I said, it's not too difficult of a system. If this was accelerated, we'd have been done about 15 minutes ago. But yeah, that's kind of it for the mechanics. Things have aspects. You invoke aspects. You can compel aspects. There's roles for overcoming things, whether it's a passive thing and it's just the difficulty set, or it's a contest and you have to beat someone else's role. The fate point economy of spending fate points and being compelled, and different things that you get your fate points back. The GM and the players trade them around. The characters have things about them that make them unique, like the aspects and the stunts. And yeah, that's kind of it. It's a pretty, like, when you get down to, you can talk about it for a while. Like I've been talking about it for 34 minutes, but like when you get down to it and actually get into the game, it's like, it's not that complicated at all. Yeah. That was about Henley's talking to my ear. I was gonna I can get to the theme and such once we're done with this. Doc had a thing. So does conceding change the narrative slightly? Say you concede to the bloodthirsty goblin army instead of just trying to kill you there, decide to take you back to camp and cook you or something. Yeah, exactly. When you concede, basically it's a chance for you to not just die. And so you concede, and then we figure out what happens there. It's obviously going to be negative. And actually, yeah, let's just go to the conceding section to talk about it. Conceded. Let's see. There was a thing about it. But where was that at? Boop, boop, boop. Was it in conflicts? I think it was at the end of conflicts. Let me go down to that. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, 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 boop. Conceding. There we go. So when conceding happens, basically you guys, we're gonna lose. Like if we don't concede now, we're just going to lose, and the enemy gets to say what happens. So the enemy can kill you, or they can do whatever the hell they want. But if you concede, you get two things happen. Basically, you get a fate point for choosing to concede. So if the player characters all concede, everybody gets a fate point. In addition for whatever else that happened, like if they had any compels during the scene or whatever. And like this says, you get to avoid the worst parts of your fate. Yes, you lost, and the narration has to reflect that. But you can't use this privilege to undermine the opponent's victory either. You say what happens has to pass muster with the group. Let's see. So, yeah, like this. So-and-so says, I concede. I don't want to risk getting hurt anymore. And so they figure out, okay, let's say that he clubs you across the head, knocks you out, and you're kind of taken out, and he leaves you alone. Or yeah, like Doc said, like you guys are fighting a goblin army and you guys concede instead of like eating you or whatever. Like we'll decide like, oh cool, yeah, maybe the goblins have like a hobgoblin leader that they want to take you back to because he told them to capture people and bring them back. And like we all agree that sounds cool. The rule of cool is a big. Not so much the rule of cool as in like changing the mechanics to fit how we want, but like there's a big thing of like compelling aspects and conceding and all the stuff where we decide like, oh yeah, that sounds like a cool thing we want to try to explore, or that's a cool direction we want to take the narrative in. So like that's how we decide a lot of things, like especially with conceding. So like if I had an idea in my head about NPCs or whatever, or like they're fighting some weird monster in a dream, and it's like, oh yeah, the dream monster is just going to kill you guys. And they're like, well, we concede. So let's figure out what happens. Like, okay, cool. So maybe the dream monster isn't just alone. They're being controlled by somebody. And that person comes down. And so when you guys wake up, you're tied to a tree and this person is standing there over you smiling. Like, let's go into that scene now. So yeah, that's conceding. That's kind of conflicts. And yeah, I guess if anybody has any questions about the mechanics, we can give it. I'm going to go into like a theme and the idea of the game next. But if anybody has any questions about the mechanics, we can feel free to answer them here. I'll give you guys a couple minutes so the thing can catch up. I can dig into like the GM side of that a little bit. So if you guys have been watching Vampire, there's a little bit of a like similarity in like the fact that like in Vampire there's like stories and arcs and campaigns and like kind of chunks of the story. This also has that too. It has to do with advancement. So like there's things called milestones, which are basically goals that the party can accomplish. And when you overcome a milestone, that's how you get XP and how you advance your character. And that's kind of where we like chunk out like what's happening in the game and such. Was there a list of player aspects, or is it something you make up as you go along? Yeah, when you create your character, each player comes up with their 5 aspects that you have, and then when you advance, you can potentially add more aspects. So yeah, each player character has their own list, and then there's going to be scene aspects, NPC aspects, and a bunch of stuff. Oh, thank you, OC. I also love Maria. She's great. She's so great. Vampire is a lot of fun. If you're not watching Vampire, you really should be, because Monday is going to be a hoot and a half. But yeah, each character has their own 5 aspects, and what's cool in this too is like you come up with your 5 aspects. Say in 2 sessions, someone's like, "Hey, this aspect doesn't really make sense for me anymore." Like, we can change them. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, especially because I'm pretty sure this is going to be everyone's first run through with Fate Core. So there's going to be a lot of like, "Hey, I came up with this aspect and it's not working for me," and we can be like, "Okay, cool. Let's figure out something that works for you better." If anybody has heard of Burning Wheel, whatever, they're kind of like beliefs and stuff like that, where you can change them as you go along as things makes more sense or whatever. And especially for new players like that, like where you come up with something and it's like, this doesn't really work for me. Like I haven't even compelled it once or whatever. So we can change them as we go, since everyone will be kind of getting used to it. I've had a few runs with Fate. This will be my first time GMing Fate. I've played it a few times, so I kind of got that economy and everything fairly decently well. But yeah, it's like I said, it's not a very difficult game to like play mechanics wise. So a lot of it's going to be coming up with cool story stuff for everybody to interact with and enjoy. Yeah, so it looks like, and obviously if you guys have more questions as we go along and we move into the next chunk of describing the idea and the story, feel free to ask them. I can hop back and forth. It's not like there's rules to this because it's my drawing board and I say how it goes. So yeah, if you have any more questions, feel free to pop them in chat. I got it right there. But yeah, let's go into like the theme and the idea now, kind of the meat of it, the actual narrative and the story and everything. So I'm going to pop roll 20 over. Yes, I will go into that as we kind of talk about this. Again, Henley in the ear. So here is the roll 20 that I've made for the game. And basically this is my GM worksheet, because as the players have a character sheet, I have a creation worksheet. So the game name is Polyrhythm. What that means is basically, if anyone's familiar with the term from like music or whatever, it's like a weird rhythm on top of another rhythm. And like kind of injecting that in. So like you have like 4 beats over 5, like 5 beats over 4 beats, and so it's this weird sounding thing. So the idea, like why it's called polyrhythm, is because it's kind of this idea of like the characters just going along with their everyday lives and they're bored and like life's just life or whatever, and then something happens to them and they get these cool powers, and then they can inject themselves into other people's dreams and just go in there and do stuff. So it's dealing with that kind of same thing of like injecting and like overlaying on top of things and messing with like the standard cadence of life and like of dreams and stuff. So that's where polyrhythm came from. That's kind of was my idea behind it. As you can see under setting and scale, what I've put is Persona-esque, very personal, but dealing with world-reaching issues. So as I said earlier, the 3 biggest like inspirations for this idea are Persona, Inception, and The Matrix. So I guess actually let's full on detail what the idea is. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to make our characters and figure out what they're all about. There's going to be normal people doing their everyday thing, like having their jobs, going to school, whatever they decide to be. And then they're going to get a visit from someone from a group called the Authority. And that person's going to offer them these powers in exchange for doing things for the Authority. And basically these powers are the ability to go into literally anyone's dream and mess around with it or figure stuff out or learn things about them and do whatever. They're also going to get paid because, the Authority has money because they're a weird group that does weird things. Basically, it's a job offer, basically. And in exchange for the powers and like earning money and getting things, the authority can basically be like, okay, we need you to target this person and do X in their dream. And that's going to be the kind of the pace of the game. Is the authority is going to come and be like, okay, so here's a thing and we need you to do it. Which is also not to say that the party can't do their own thing, of course. Like it's not going to be like, oh, we tell you everything you get to do ever. Like the party's going to have a lot of freedom to do their own shit. Like the authority's going to be like, hey, we have a target for you. Hit them whenever and let us know when the job's done. And so then they can do whatever the hell they want to do with it. And so that's kind of where at least the start of it's going to be. If someone from the authority is going to visit the party and say, blah, 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 powers, blah, 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 jobs, blah, blah, blah. Do you accept? And then they'll get the powers. And what we're doing with the powers is I'm going to be giving the players a lot of freedom to do their own thing with it. So during character creation, we're just going to be kind of, you guys get to just tell me what your powers are. And then that's how they'll work in dreams or whatever. So say someone's like, in dreams, basically my power is Digimon. When we're in dreams, I have a creature that appears next to me and they can fight things on my behalf or whatever. And then that's the power you have. And that sounds cool. That sounds awesome. Or someone else is like, when I turn on my powers in the dream, I get cool Gundam armor and like a laser sword and shit. And I was like, cool, you have weird Gundam armor in dreams. Or like someone else is like, I want to have weird mind powers so I can have like weird telekinesis and like digging into people's heads and like illusions or whatever the hell you want. Yu-Gi-Oh would be a great power too, where you just have like a deck of cards and you just throw shit and like summon a monster or whatever. That'd be awesome. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot. Yeah, basically that. It's character creation is basically going to be that of us talking about how cool everyone's powers are going to be and figuring out the coolest thing that everyone wants. And that's going to be your powers in the dream. So when you go into the dream, you can have these powers that you turn on and do whatever you're going to do. And then like an idea, like that's kind of where a big inspiration from like Inception and Persona comes in. Like in Inception, they went into people's dreams to like steal stuff or put stuff in there or like figure stuff out or do whatever. That's kind of going to be the jobs like this, like, and then like kind of like the same thing in Persona, especially Persona 5, because I just played it. Henley just played it. It's very deep in our minds right now. So like in Persona 5, if you haven't seen it yet, basically the idea is the character you play in Persona 5 gets these weird powers and gets the ability to steal people's hearts. Like they enter someone's hearts and like it's a manifestation of their deepest desires. And it's all topsy-turvy and like they steal their desires and shit. It's really weird. It's a very good game. Play it if you haven't like gotten the chance yet. But it's kind of mixing those two ideas. Basically, the players in this game, in our game, are going to be able to enter someone's dream. Their dream is going to be, and kind of where that weirdness is going to be, is the fact that it's a dream. It can be whatever the hell it's going to be. So it could be they enter a dream and it's an upside down castle, and the players have to navigate this weird upside down castle and find something. And that the job might be stuff like figure out where this person buried this thing 20 years ago, or figure out what their plans are in the next 5 years. Or it could even be make them hate this person, or make them scared of dogs, or like weird stuff like that. It's gonna be a lot of weird mental stuff, either figuring stuff out or putting stuff in and basically affecting them in these weird ways. And then they go into the dream and like kind of just do that, like because you have weird dream powers and shit. So yeah, like in the dream, the players are gonna be able to invoke their powers and bring like. It's confusing because I say invoke and that actually has a meaning in Fate, but when I say invoke here, it means turning on your powers and fighting stuff or whatever. But also they're going to be able to affect the dreams and stuff. I'm part of me. I've changed. I'm leaving Fate as it is mostly, but there's a little bit of changing in that the players are going to have the ability to like affect the dream world. So like if they're going through a thing in the dream world and like they get caught in this prism of crystal and they're just like, can I just make a door? And it's going to be like, sure, let's roll and make a door. And then things are going to happen in that. So like you're going to have powers to affect stuff, which is going to be, you know, a whole thing. It seemed pretty cool. Kind of like in Inception where they're just like, yeah, this staircase is actually infinite and I'm just going to make this staircase lead around here. And it just goes to this door that I needed to go through. And it's going to be a whole thing. Yeah, that's the example is kind of like that. Doc said like, so like this guy's going to be flying to France. You need to convince him not to do that. And so they go into the dream and find the person in the dream and like make them like stuff happen to them and basically give their inner mind the impression that flying is going to be a very bad idea. Like stuff like that, or with like at least the authority jobs are going to be. And then there's going to be there's not just going to be dream world stuff. There's going to be real world stuff too. Like they're going to be able to do stuff in the real world and go around and like, because there's a lot more to it of like being able to enter someone's dream, but like they're going to figure stuff out about these people. They're going to be like, they're also going to have their normal lives to deal with and stuff. So like whatever jobs or people they have in their normal lives, there's going to be all that too. Are we going to be able to see why the authority wants to make a thing happen? If you want to look into that, it's totally a thing. Cause, yeah, like, I know the big part of this was having like a very driving force behind it. Like, it's fairly sandboxy, but there's definitely like a very present narrative throughout it. There's bad people. There's actually multiple bad people, bad factions kind of. And of course the authority is just these people that came and gave you powers. You don't know what the hell they're about. So yeah, if you want to look into the authority, you can feel free to do that. Yeah, I wanted to make sure everybody had like a lot of options and like stuff driving them to want to do things. So, and of course, when we get into it more, there's gonna be a lot more stuff. Going into Inception, it took me a minute to figure out what the hell is going on. Yes, Tank Man. This is definitely a very weird die party game. There's a lot of stuff, not a lot of stuff like going on, but just stuff like concepts to grasp and be like, oh, okay, like it's a weird thing. Like there's gonna be a lot of like you can almost say like Wonderland is almost a thing where it's just like, why is that there? Why are you asking why? It's just a thing. Like, you know, upside down castle. Why is it upside down? Why is it? It's just upside down. Like that's just the way it is or whatever. Like there's gonna be a lot of weird stuff like that. And I hope like, I mentioned at the beginning, like kind of the difference between like this and like something like Numenera or like other games where there's like weird shit is like, this is literally gonna be people's dreams. Like things aren't going to make sense. And it's just, people are going to have to deal with it because it's a weird dream. And so how about I get into, so I've kind of talked about like the initial push of the story, that the players get this new job essentially, where they can enter people's dreams and get these weird powers and they figure out a bunch of stuff about the world and like stuff to investigate. Let's talk about what all of y'all can do with this game, because as with the other die party games, if you're a member of the Patreon, you can give us ideas and put stuff into the game. And basically, if you come up with something, you'll see it on screen in the game. We're still figuring out like the levels and stuff, but basically some things that you guys are gonna be able to do are a big thing is going to be targets. I want to be like have you guys like come up with like a person to target and like what they have to do in that person's dream. So like if you have the idea for I want to see some big bank person get targeted and make them want them to get their money away or something like that. If someone gives me that idea and puts that through the Patreon thing, I'm like, oh, cool. And I'll build that in and that you'll see that target be targeted at some point. So that's a pretty big contribution that you can make as part of the Patreon. Another thing is obviously like NPCs. So like people you want to see in the game, whether it be in the real world or in the dream world or whatever. There's a few NPCs here already that I've been creating kind of as part of my game creation. And so there's a lot of room for you guys to come up with stuff. You can come up with like people that are in the authority, because people are going to see them, like a bunch more people in the authority. Like, because, you know, the group isn't going to be the only authority agents. Like, they might see them when they're in a dream or come across them in real life or something. Who knows? There's going to be like real world people like this CEO guy. There's going to be this other group called the Breach, which, you know, who are the Breach? I don't know. Maybe we'll see them. Who knows? But yeah, there's a lot of room for you guys to come up with NPCs and kind of inject them in and have a lot of stuff for you. Oh, there's some stuff going on in the chat. Let me grab that around. Let's see. Henley, is there anything going to be connecting the powers together like a persona that's tied to stuff? Definitely. I was kind of, during character creation, definitely going to make that a thing, like come up with your powers and make it like a thing around you or whatever, like, because the powers are going to be up to you guys. So like, it can totally be like connecting to you, have like something to do with your inner stuff. And actually there's gonna be a part of it that basically, yes, it's definitely going to relate to you as a person and connect to you in real life as well. And yeah, we'll definitely cover all that in character creation, kind of with the powers, because I've come up with this extra, like, it's not changing the stuff too much. Basically, the characters get a little bit more stuff because of these weird powers. But yeah, basically kind of similar to Persona. Yeah, like your power is definitely going to be like invocative of yourself or like your inner self or whatever. Like if someone like has a weird Gundam armor or whatever, that might be just part of who they are or something, like stuff like that. Kind of like in Persona where like Joker is very like open about a lot of stuff and has the power to have different kinds of persona or whatever, and has that the one ultimate persona, like that the one that you get at the beginning where they can, like, they're very, very powerful. Or like or Fox is like very very fancy and very like traditional and such. Yeah, so it's very definitely encouraged to like tie the power and what you're all about to like your character as a person. Definitely gonna be a lot of that, especially because we're taking a lot of inspiration from this kind of anime-ish persona thing. So like tons of that, totally. And everyone else's stuff too. So like if we meet an authority agent and they have weird powers, it's definitely gonna be tied to them as a person or whatever. And then Doc had another question. How will the enter the dream mechanic work? So it's not going to be a hook 'em up to the machine thing like Inception. It's going to be a little bit Persona in that like you have to do a thing to make it happen, but like it's not going to be. You're not going to have to like kidnap this person, get them in a room with you, and like you're only going to have 20 minutes to do this or whatever. Like there's going to be an aspect of like, okay, we have the ability to enter this person's dream, we can just do it as a thing. There's kind of going to be like part of the powers are going to be when they go to sleep, you enter into like the dream world, which in this game is going to be called the escape. I'm planning on like obviously the characters can have questions and stuff when we get into the game, so there's gonna be like a little bit of exposition in explaining stuff. But in my head and like coming up with this, there's a thing called the escape, which is kind of this other reality that you go to when you dream, and then the powers are going to be able to like capture that of a person and put themselves into it. So you like inject your thing into that person's chunk of the escape, called a shard. Yes, a lot of these names are very whatever good word for cliche is, but I totally wanted to capture that because again, we're taking a lot of inspiration from this like anime-ish, persona-ish, inception-ish thing where it's just like there's like the words for stuff, but you know, it sounds cool. So like I came up with a bunch of different things. So yeah, you like enter into these people's shards, which are chunks of the escape that are basically that person's dream, and you can inject yourself into there with your powers and do whatever the hell you're going to do. But yeah, it's not going to be like Inception where you have to kidnap them and do something with them. Basically, there's going to be like a thing you have to do to get into someone's dream, and once that door is open, you can do it. So it's going to be very power based, not like sciencey based. Yeah, cool. So there's that. Another thing. So flipping back to the Patreon stuff. Another thing you guys are going to be able to come up with are weird monsters, because part of the escape is weird shit. So like you guys are going through a weird upside down castle, and then there's a knight that's made out of cake. There's a bunch of weird dessert knights that are blocking the way, and so you have to fight them. Stuff like that we're going to be able to come out of the Patreon as well. So like, if you guys have an idea for like a weird monster or like a weird, basically any kind of, it's more than just monsters actually, because it's really any sort of obstacle. So you'd like kind of as a whole thing, it's like, I'm not sure what to call it, but like sections of the dream or like aspects of the, like actually aspects would be a really good thing. So like, things having to do with the dreams and aspects around them are things you guys can come up with the Patreon of like, being like, hey, I have an idea for a dream world that's like New York, if New York was made of candy, like, and there's these sorts of monsters in it and like these sorts of obstacles that they're gonna have to overcome. And like, that's the thing. And then like someone would give that and it's like, oh, cool. That sounds great. And then we'll put that in and like, I'll figure out like, okay, cool. So this target's going to have Candy New York as their dream instance. Yes, I nabbed that from Chad. Thank you, Doc. Yes, instance dungeons. They're raids, right? You gather up your friends, go into a raid, do the thing, and you're good. But yeah, there's a lot of room for you guys to come up with like, because like I said, it's weird ass shit. So like, if you have an idea, as long as it's, you know, not hateful or inappropriate or whatever, and you know, you can get away with a lot of stuff, but like, there's no limit on like what you can do, on what you can inject into these worlds and like the dream stuff, because, you know, unless you haven't dreamed, which I'm sorry, because dreaming is pretty fun. Like, you've had dreams, you remember weird shit. Like I had a dream where I could eat people's thoughts. They tasted like fruit roll-ups. They're pretty tasty. So I ran around my school and just grabbed people's thoughts and ate them. We're going to ignore what happened after that because it was not good, but you know, I got to eat a bunch of fruit roll-up thoughts.
Let me just jump in here real quick, Tuxton. You know, the stream can hear me right now, but
oh, okay.
So with the Patreon stuff, there are 3 possible tiers, and maybe you can sort of sit down and sort of come up with which stuff is associated with which tier. There's the $30 companion tier, which is, you know, the highest tier level that we have, which for the most part would give someone the ability to maybe come up with like I was thinking, you know, based on what you were saying, people could come up with, say, an entire scenario with a person, and
that's kind of what I was thinking too. Yeah,
what the authority would want from them. Mm-hmm. There's a $15 friend tier for the support for Die Party, which you know, sounds something almost like maybe they can come up with a rival team in the authority or something like that. Some sort of like NPC or something. Keeping in mind that the $30 tier would also get to make one of the lower tiers. And then there's the fan tier, which is the $5 tier. And with that, what were you thinking? Maybe like, is there maybe like a theme? They can come up with a theme for like a dungeon that can get used randomly.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, I think we were kind of thinking along the same thing. Like, so like the $5 tier would be kind of like maybe like an individual thing or like a theme. The next tier would be kind of that bigger thing, like a few NPCs or like a rival group, or like a section of a dungeon or something like that. And then the $30 tier could be an entire scenario of like, here's the target, here's what their dream world's like, and this is why the authority wants something done with them or whatever. Like, yeah, kind of like a tiered thing of that, where it's like, and we can officially lay it all out, but yeah, like lowest tier would be kind of like individual stuff or smaller pieces of a dream world or whatever of a situation. Second tier, like a bigger chunk, like a few different NPCs or like a theme for the entire scenario or whatever. And then the $3 tier would be a whole like chunk of things, like an entire story arc or basically like could be part of that.
So if you want to be a part of like building this stuff, head on over to patreon.com/Henley or !Patreon in the chat. Head over there, you know, pledge your support on whatever level you want. After this episode goes live and it's up on YouTube, we will send out the links to the Patreons, and it'll just be like a submission form, like a Google form or something like that, where you can put in your ideas and stuff. So anyway, back to Eternal Silence. Woo!
Bye, Hanley. But yeah, you totally should. Because if you're part of the Patreon, you can submit to, like, I'm pretty sure most of the Die Party most, if not all, the Die Party games have something you can submit to. I know Vampire was starting to get some. The Pirate game that they're coming out with was starting to get like NPCs and like the countries and stuff. And in this game, there's going to be a lot of not like huge country things, but like you could if you're at the $30 tier, you could be like, okay, there's this person. Here's their secret backstory, and this is why the Authority wants them, and their dream world is this, and like fuck, we could even like sit down and chat about it or something too. Like really, like yeah, there's what's cool about this one, at least, like obviously they're all really cool, but what's cool about this one is just the freedom to just be like, I want a mechanized dog army. Like, okay, cool, let's figure out what the hell the mechanized dog army is about. Like there's no limits besides, you know, like really, really bad stuff. And obviously that's kind of goes without saying, but like, you know, imagination, you're the only limit is your imagination in this game, at least because of the nature of it, with going into dreams and the fact that literally anything can happen in a dream. And that's kind of a big part of this game too, is like, I wanted to make sure there's gonna be a lot of weird imagery, a lot of weird stuff going on. Like when you're in a dream, the laws of physics might not apply. So like, they might just be able to float around, or like gravity might not be real, or like you enter a door and it's like this room is way bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, kind of stuff. Like that sort of weird thing is like, and there's going to be a big juxtaposition between like the stuff in the dream world and then stuff that the players do in reality. Because obviously reality is bound by real life rules. And so like a degree of that's going to be like, if they want to make their time in the dream easier, like if they want to influence something about the dream, they could like find the person in real life and do something like make them scared or something and make the dream different in that way. And that's kind of part of what the real life stuff's going to be and such. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of freedom to come up with weird stuff. And that's going to be a big part of the game, is this like strangeness of this world and the different stuff that the players are doing. And the fact that they have like powers that they just randomly get and have to figure out what the hell they do. And they're going to have some help from the Authority, of course, but like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of autonomy of the players by themselves. But yeah, so so yeah, so there's the Authority, which is kind of the main group that gives the players their thing and is like basically their employers. There's a company that I created, like a really big tech company that's trying to get in, like kind of trying to use the escape for stuff. There's this group called the Breach, which is kind of like one of the bad people in the game. They want to use the escape and the dream world for their own bad stuff. And there's a couple of the important NPCs. These aren't like the only NPCs, but these are kind of like, as part of this game creation worksheet, they encourage you to come up with like big NPCs or big important locations and stuff. I didn't come up with locations because when I was doing this, obviously, like it'll depend. Like I can't come up with a dream world right now because we don't know what. Like I come up with ideas, but the aspects, because this is a big part of this, is coming up with the aspects for things. So you know, coming up with the aspects is going to be when we come up with the dream world for one of their targets. So I came up with a bunch of NPCs, and so like the big people for the Authority, the big people for this company, the big people for the Breach, and there's gonna be more as we go along. And of course, you guys, when you if you submit to the Patreon, can inject NPCs into this game as well, and plenty of room for you guys to do stuff with these factions, do stuff with the characters in real life. Like if during character creation, you see like you really get in on someone's character and like they work at a school, and you could come up with an NPC for the school or something like that, which would be fun. Yeah, lots of room for stuff for you guys. Let me bring up my Word document. Yeah, I've kind of covered everything in my Word document. That's not because I want to go over the ideas, but not like, you know, everything and be totally spoilery and stuff. But yeah, kind of the main ideas I've covered with this thing. So like weird dream stuff, a lot of inspiration from Persona, Inception, The Matrix. Oh, I can go into the powers, I think now. Yeah, here, let me do that. So basically, this is what's going to happen with the powers. Bring this over. There we go. That should be on screen once they go up. Let me make sure the thing. Cool. So here's what the powers are. So like I said, I'm not changing fate around too much. But this is a change because obviously you don't get powers right away with creating a character in this game. So basically once we do character creation and we come up with the powers, this is what's going to happen. One of the character's aspects is going to have to relate to how the powers manifest. So kind of like Henley asked earlier, like this aspect is going to say how the powers relate to you as a person. And so like you might have an aspect that's I hide behind a suit of armor or whatever, and your power is weird armor stuff, but that also could mean like you hide a lot, or you hide behind a mask, or like you try to protect people, like weird stuff like that kind of. The powers basically give you fictional positioning to use them when making skill rolls. So when you turn on your powers in a dream, you get to use those for things. So like rather than I go up and punch them, you can say I turn on my powers and I shoot a gout of flame at this person. And it's like, cool, it's going to be a lot more damaging than punching them. Because it kind of because this game is about doing things with skills, I want to make sure that rather than coming up with rather than having like weird effects, it's basically you get to decide what they do, and then we figure out how that works in a skill roll. I'm giving everyone an extra stunt. Since we talked about stunts earlier, basically what this is going to do is I'm calling it imbue, and they get to pick a skill. And when they invoke an aspect on that skill, they get a +3 instead of a +2. So this is kind of because the powers are going to basically they're internal. They're about the person, and they're going to come into the real world too. So like it makes them better at things. So like someone might say, I want to be really a lot better at driving because of this power. And so when they invoke an aspect for driving, they get an even bigger bonus. And as part of coming over into the real world, everyone gets to have 2 passive effects that carry over into the real world as a result of getting those powers. I know that's definitely a little like, got to kind of wrap your head around it kind of thing. So I wrote down a couple examples of like, say if your thing is to summon creatures in the escape, perhaps in the real world, you have a small degree of communication with animals. So you have some sort of weird connection to creatures or whatever. Maybe in the escape, if you control and summon the elemental effects, like if you have avatar powers or whatever, maybe in the real world, you have resistance to those things. Like you can be out in the snow with just a t-shirt on and be fine, or like walk into an oven and be fine. Like weird things like that. Like, so because the real world's going to still be bound by the real physics and such, but like the powers are still going to be able to affect them in some way. And so that's kind of how the characters are going to change a little bit. Mostly besides that, the rules of Fate core are staying as they are. But as we wanted to represent, default, you don't get powers. So this is how I'm making them in the mechanics. And obviously this is kind of me figuring this out. If something doesn't work or whatever, we can fix it or make it better. Whatever the player's feedback is once we get this figured out is going to be very important. So I'll put that back over here, go back to the Roll20. And yeah, I think that's about it for me. Once again, just a wrap up of the themes and ideas. If you're looking for something to get into to like kind of get in the headspace of this, you can check out Henley's playthrough of Persona, watch The Matrix, watch Inception, check out some Escher art or Dolly art, that kind of weird stuff. Get a bunch of weird imagery in your head, and then you can dive into the game with kind of the same mindset that I'm going into with it. It's definitely very kind of video gamey / anime-ish. Like there's a lot of big things happening. Because like I said, it's Persona-esque where we're going to focus on these characters and what's going on in their lives, but the stuff they're going to be dealing with is very big stuff. So yeah, If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me in the Discord. I'm in Henley's Discord, so you can PM me there. I'm on Twitter, also Tuxtradamus. Catch me wherever. If you want to catch me over on my own stream or here or wherever. If you have questions about this, feel free to ask. If you have suggestions, and of course, once we get the Patreon things figured out, which should be soon, we'll solidify the tiers and stuff, and then get that to you guys so you can start putting stuff in. Maybe after the character creation or even before that, if you guys have ideas. But yeah, lots of stuff for you to submit and interact with this. So take all that as you will. I hope you enjoyed this look into Fate Core and the idea for Diaparty Polyrhythm. And I hope you have a great night. And that's it for me.